Hi, I'm John Maxwell. When the top companies in the world are looking for trainers, speakers, and coaches, there's one name that stands above the rest, and that's Maxwell Leadership. Our certified team members have gotten proven results for companies all over the globe, and our reputation, I'm proud to say, is second to none. Some of our members have risen to the top of their profession, including the one you're going to meet today. I proudly introduce you to my friend Bob Fabian Zinka.
Welcome to the Leadership and Success Podcast with your host, Coach BZ, where we help you lead with purpose and succeed with impact. If you're ready to grow into the kind of leader others want to follow, this podcast is for you. If you're determined to elevate your success and leave a lasting legacy, this podcast is for you. As my mentor, Dr. John C. Maxwell reminds us, everything rises and falls on leadership. Our goal is simple: to inspire you, challenge you, and equip you with insights that can transform the trajectory of your leadership journey. Welcome aboard to another episode of the Leadership and Success Podcast with Coach BZ.
Hi everyone, Dennis Katolin here, Lieutenant Colonel, United States Marine Corps, and author of the book On Ethics, a doctrine for the American warfighter, which you can get absolutely free. Just shoot me an email at warfighterethics, one word, at gmail.com. Just let me know that you'd like a copy of the book, and I'll get it to you. What you're about to see is a series of videos to guide you through the book and help facilitate follow-on discussion with some of the ideas and concepts in it. The first video provides a succinct sort of problem-framing brief that addresses why I felt that the book needed to be written. Ultimately, as far as I can tell, based on the research that I've done, this book is the first codified doctrine on the applied ethic of military ethics. The second video covers the first chapter of the book. The third video covers the second chapter of the book. And then the fourth video will bring it home with the third and final chapter of the book. While this is, to the best of my knowledge, the only doctrine that exists on the applied ethic of military ethics, that this book is not in any way, shape, or form adopted by the U.S. Marine Corps or any branch of military service. This is just one person's opinion. So if there's anything that you think could help you or your team out, please feel free to use any of it. That being said, my charter to all of you and to each one of our service chiefs is to come up with a codified doctrine for each one of the services. What is our understanding of the nature of ethics? Why do we think it's useful for us as warfighting organization? And then ultimately, what is the respective services' philosophy on the topic of ethics? To have that codified, I think, would be really helpful to every serviceman and woman today. We'll also say that if your service does answer the challenge to get to create a codified doctrine on ethics, that you should obviously go with that. So that's it. Hope you find the book helpful, and I hope these videos help further the understanding that you may have about the topic of military.
All right, we have a very, very special guest here today, and we've already received quite a few questions from the audience, which is quite unusual. So I know this is going to be a very insightful podcast. Thank you so much for watching. And as you know, I always ask, let us know in the comment where you guys are watching us from on LinkedIn and YouTube. What city and what state, and if you are outside of the United States, which country. Let us also know what you are grateful for, and if you have a question for my guest today, please type your question in the comment, and we're going to be answering live. As you know, we usually start the show, right, with what we call the moment of gratitude. But I know we have so much packed today, so I'm not going to be taking much time, but one thing I am really grateful for today, one is freedom, and that's why I love America so much, right? The home of the brave, the land of the free. But also people like the colonel we're going to be talking to today. You know, he comes on this podcast. He doesn't ask for money. He doesn't want to get paid, but he's sharing knowledge that is so crucial, I believe, and that is so timely, especially for my junior enlisted and junior officer who follow the show. So I am so grateful for great leaders like the colonel who really care about the future of the U.S. Military. So grateful for that. So without any further ado, let me see if I can properly introduce the Colonel today. One question I usually ask is, what happens to our values when everything becomes hard? And what if ethics isn't simply about doing the right thing, but is actually a source of trust, speed, cohesion, and operational effectiveness? Lately, we've heard a lot about might is right and bravado, and if you are strong enough, you just take whatever you want. But is that actually the right thing to do? Right. So join me today for the next episode of the Leadership and Success podcast for a fascinating conversation with Colonel Dennis Katolin. He has a doctorate, PhD, and he is on active duty U.S. Marine Corps. Of course, being on active duty, whatever opinion he's going to express today are going to be his own opinion, not the opinion of the Department of Defense or Department of War or the U.S. Marine Corps. So he's a Marine officer, a combat veteran, a commander, strategist, educator, author, and leading advocate for treating ethics as an essential component of war fighting. So Colonel Katolin has served our nation for more than 2 decades now, including combat tours in Iraq, Afghanistan, and leadership assignments spanning communication, cyber, information operation, education, planning, and command. He commanded Marine Wing Communication Squadron 28, where his Marine developed the Marine Corps' first information maneuver SOP. He also helped initiate and co-author MCDP-8 information, and his career has taken him from 1st Battalion, 7th Marine to the Deputy Commandant for Information, MAR4 Cyber, Marine Corps Information Command, and back to the 1st Marine Division. Wow. Colonel Katolin is also a 3rd-degree black belt instructor trainer in the Marine Corps Martial Arts Program and an accomplished scholar. He holds a PhD from Virginia Tech and graduate degrees from the National War College, Marine Corps University, and National University. His newest book, Strategic Culture, Military Adaptation, and the Information Environment, a Comparative. It examines how the United States, China, Russia, and the United Kingdom have adapted to an information environment increasingly blurring the boundaries among military operation, political authority, technology, and society. But perhaps his most provocative argument is captured in these 3 words: ethics wins war. I believe the Colonel argues that ethics isn't separate from combat effectiveness, but ethics leads to reliability, to trust, to cooperation, to cohesion, and then to combat power. When trust increases, friction decreases, and leaders can delegate, teams can exercise initiative, and decision accelerate, and organization become more resilient. That principle applies on the battlefield and in the boardroom as well for my Silicon Valley friends out there. So part of what we're going to be learning today is why ethics can be an operational advantage, not merely a constraint on behavior. And also why human judgment, character, trust, and ethical leadership may become even more important in the age of artificial intelligence. So without any further ado, please help me welcome to the Leadership and Success podcast, the one and only Colonel Dennis Katolin.
Hi, BZ. Thank you for having me on the podcast. That's quite an introduction. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. Such a great honor and privilege to be speaking to you. And I know this podcast could go for 2 or 3 hours, but we're not going to let that happen. But I'm so excited to be talking to you today, sir. Just to get started, what is one thing that you are grateful for today, sir?
I'm grateful for my family. I've been blessed with 3 wonderful children and a wonderful partner in my wife. And as the kids, as summer starts to end and the kids go to school, with one going off to college here next week.
Wow.
Being blessed to have so much time with them over the course of the summer, and moving from the East Coast now back to California has been wonderful. So yeah, that's what I'm grateful for.
No, we have 2 daughters, so our last baby is going to college next week. I still can't believe it. I have to pinch myself. My goodness.
Yeah.
We're going to have an empty home for a while here. But wow, that is fantastic. Congratulations, sir. And is there something about you, sir, that most people may not know when they first meet you? Maybe a superpower, just something distinctive, unique about you?
Something unique about me. I'd say somebody's always really shocked at this, or I've shared this when I talk about being creative in the service, is when I got back from the war, my first 2 tours, I sort of wanted to check things off of my bucket list. And one of the things I always wanted to do was make a movie. So in 2008, I had some wonderful friends when I was over at Second Fleet in Norfolk, and we made a movie.
Really?
There is an IMDb page that has my name on. Apparently, we entered it into festivals, and so it was accepted into one or two. But
wow,
yeah. So yeah, that I think is probably a unique qualifier.
Okay, I have to ask you, what is the name of the movie? How do you watch it?
The movie is called Day, and you've done nothing so bad in your life that you deserve to watch that movie. So I would not subject you all to it, but it was really a wonderful experience to meet great people and work on a creative project. So it was very, very fun, but it did show my my lack of skill when it comes to writing and directing a movie. So yeah.
Wow, that is awesome. Great to hear, sir. Wow. Well, one question I like to start, sir, is who is the man, Dennis Katolin, just beyond all of your achievements, your accolades, your rank, and all of the great things you have done? Who are you at your core, sir?
That's an interesting question. I mean, you know, my father, born and raised in from Missouri. My mom is a immigrant from Europe, and I'd say a lot of after my dad retired from the Marine Corps.
Wow.
He worked for you know, in the private sector for defense companies, and being able to go to, you know, middle school in Abu Dhabi and high school in Egypt, which were incredible blessings, you know, for a kid who's growing up in southern Missouri, was awesome. But loved those places, but it very much made me long for the United States when we'd come home during the summers, and my mother would talk about the United States.
Wow.
You know, just from an outside perspective, as an immigrant, I remember helping her study for her citizenship test. I remember there was, you know, looking back, there are questions on that thing that I don't think I could pass.
Yes.
Down. So I was very, very appreciative growing up of not just of what this country is and kind of what it stands for. Yes. And so I'd say appreciating that is kind of, and finding a way to serve and contribute to that has been kind of the sense of what I do, I think.
Well, so I can testify as an immigrant myself, a naturalized U.S. citizen. You do need to read the Constitution and really know about the history of this country if you're going to become a citizen. It's wow, that is quite amazing. Your father being a Marine, is it partly the reason why you are a Marine officer today, sir?
It is. I mean, he never pushed for me to join the service, but in my appreciation for America, and you know, when I was growing up and wanting to find a way to serve, that was an option that was kind of at the forefront for me, and it was very, very appealing. I look up to my dad a lot, and so that was the path. That's why I kind of went down that path.
Yeah, I know for myself, after 9/11, I was trying to figure out which branch of the military to join. The few were proud of the Marines, but you guys are just crazy, man. Yeah. Thank God for everything you do. Somebody has to do it, but not me. I was like, yeah. The Air Force, my father-in-law was retired tech sergeant, Air Force, and then the Navy. I really loved that movie. I think that recruited more sailor than in any other movies by Tom Cruise. What's the movie called?
Top Gun.
Top Gun. That is one. Just the uniform. The sailors just look so cool. But anyway, so I ended up being a sailor. But are there any experiences, sir, that most shaped the leader sitting with me today?
A few things. I'd say, you know, my first formidable years in the Marine Corps were with, as you mentioned, 1st Battalion, 7th Marines, so an infantry battalion in 29 Palms, under 1st Marine Division. But you know, I had an incredible group of leaders in my platoon that were molding me, my staff non-commissioned officers, and an amazing platoon, and just but the brutal realities. There are some tough times during those deployments, and you can train all day long here in the U.S. and you can read books, but when you're confronted with the real dangers to your people, that kind of woke me up to how hard the business can be. So that was very formative for me. And then I would say my time as an instructor at the Marine Corps Expeditionary Warfare School was really, really insightful and kind of the genesis for my work on ethics. I was fortunate enough to be around amazing faculty members. My peers were just incredible people. And so learning from them about how to be a true student of warfare, which I, in hindsight, would have loved to have had before I had deployed. So I started studying doctrine, teaching doctrine, how to plan, what it meant to be a professional. That was really informative. And then, I had two phenomenal leaders, and now 4-star General Frank Donovan, who is the commander of Southcom, and then another phenomenal leader in Major General, now retired, Jason Bohm, who was sent to fight ISIS when he was the commanding officer of 5th Marine Regiment, and just both incredible leaders. And then I think the last thing during my time there, I was allowed to attend the Marine Corps Martial Arts Instructor Trainer course.
That's amazing.
Which was super, super intense. Really, really.
Can imagine.
Introduced a lot to interpersonal violence, but what was phenomenal, and that kind of got me on this path of ethics in war, is I was exposed to the leadership of two gentlemen. One was both phenomenal. One was retired Lieutenant Colonel Joe Shusko, who's the director of the program, and then a guest speaker who was founder of the character discipline of MCMAP, our martial arts program, a guy named Jack Hoban, who wrote a wonderful book called The Ethical Warrior. And so it was fascinating to be in such intense and violent moments, but those two men were demanding adherence to our values in those challenging times. And then that complemented my study of doctrine while I was teaching it at Expeditionary Warfare School. And I started to notice a linkage between the two that hadn't been made overtly in our institutions of education in the military. And so that got me down this path here.
That is really amazing. And so you've written not just one, but 2, 3, actually 4 that I know of, books about ethics. What really got you on this path? Why are you so interested about ethics? Why is that important?
Because it became apparent to me, when I was going through the training at the Martial Arts Center, is that, you never go through it alone. You're part of a squad. And so oftentimes there are combat engagements that we do when we're fighting where you have to go, it's not very seldom is it just one-on-one. It's teams going against each other, and you have to compete in an austere environment. What I found was the demand was, even though you're tired, even though there's anxiety about fighting again, and you're being exposed to receiving violence, the people who were successful were the ones that stuck to their values when things got really, really hard. And that being inoculated to that type of stress, showing that you can still be resilient and adhere to the values of the institution, made you a more cohesive force. And then through that cohesion, you were far more effective. And then when I saw how it was being presented in institutions of learning in a classroom setting through PowerPoints, which is foundational to right? You have to have an education before you get into training, right? You need to know some of the basics. It was usually, I started to find a gap between ethics as it was taught, usually by people who hadn't served. And if they did, they very, very seldom did I see it being taught in a way that made us successful in combat. And it was usually references to Aristotle, Kant, Hobbes, all these great philosophers. But I found myself saying, what am I supposed to do with this? If I'm a lieutenant back in Iraq leading those Marines in war and worrying about their safety, but knowing that we have an important job to do, how does any of this really help me? How does this help me outmaneuver the enemy? And how does this help me support policy, which is our theory of war? And I started to notice as I was reading our doctrine that there were implied tasks about how ethics makes us an effective combat force and helps us support policy. And I thought no one had made that gap and had bridged that gap. And so that's why I decided to go down this path, because I felt we talked a good game about ethics and those types of things, but no one had tied it in a specific and measurable way to success.
Wow. That is really powerful because my understanding, sir, is you are pretty much the one who wrote the first ethic doctrine, right, for the U.S. Marine Corps, which is just amazing. Wow, that's and then you also earned a PhD, like I said, I believe from the University of Virginia. How has that path been, sir? Just what you experienced throughout that journey.
Yeah. So the reason why I went down that path was I was fascinated with the concept of information power projection.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was very, very new. It was 2019 when the Marine Corps made information a warfighting function alongside fires, intelligence, command and control. And it said information's a warfighting function, but there was nothing else after that. So I thought we needed a doctrine on that. So I was blessed to have a wonderful leader in Lieutenant General Reynolds. She said, "Okay, well, let's go. So go ahead and write it." And so
Wow.
we put that together. But I thought that's a conceptual framework. But I wanted to understand how certain militaries are. Everybody's kind of jumping in, but how were some being successful and how others weren't? And so I thought, while I'm operating and working in the information space, why don't I study on my own time to accelerate my understanding so that I could take those lessons from my studies and apply them in the Fleet Marine Force. And there was a close correlation there. So it was a close linkage between those two. They weren't mutually exclusive. So it was a very, very fortunate experience.
Wow, that is really fascinating. And like we said in the introduction, you've served combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. What did combat teach you, sir, about leadership that no classroom, book, or professional military education could have taught you?
I would say that really the varsity working of combat, I think everybody focuses on preparation is everything.
Yes.
It's everything. And I think that, especially if you're going to be a leader, it's one thing to inspire people with great speeches. That's true. But really, if you're going to be a really good leader and if you're going to send people into combat, what they want you to do, they don't want you to be somebody who mindlessly shares in hardship. Yes. I think we all understand that, if they're not eating, you're not eating. If they're, under stress, you're under stress. If they're being exposed to danger, you expose yourself to danger. That's great. It's great. And I think that's foundational. But what I noticed was a successful leader will do, for lack of a better term, the nerd work.
Yes.
And it doesn't make it into a movie or a video game, but somebody who does the real tedious administrative drill of proper planning, of coordinating with people and making sure, hey, look, am I going to have the resources for my people? Being alone and thinking quietly about all the challenges your people are going to face. Anticipating those things, getting them the resources they need, the time they need, getting them support from other organizations that they need, so that being with them through really tough times is great. Mitigating those tough times through planning so that they're just safer and success is much easier than it needs to be. I think is one of the things that I saw success stories in that during my time in combat. And unfortunately, in some instances where the not flashy things weren't tended to, and Marines unfortunately had to pay a price for that.
Wow, so sorry to hear that. But one thing you are saying, sir, is really a great leadership principle. And for my junior officers out there, right, I think I learned this from Oprah and Maya Angelou. Success is when preparation meets opportunity.
Yeah,
that is so insightful. And so you've been a platoon commander, a company commander, a squadron commander, educator, planner, senior staff officer. How has your definition of leadership changed as your responsibility increased?
I don't think it. I don't think it changes what leadership is. I think how you go about leading is different. Insofar as you become less about direct tasking and more about maintaining a system and a culture.
Mm-hmm.
There's more of a shift towards focusing on those things, so that you facilitate. The more senior you get, you facilitate an ecosystem and a culture, and try to get that permeate. So as a squadron commander, it's not my job to tell lieutenants and corporals and staff sergeants what to do. It's to tell the company commanders and the XO, the sergeant major, the master gunnery sergeant, and the operations officer. These are the things we need to do to facilitate those people's success. Be very, very clear about what the expectations are and what the vision is, and then give them the resources that they need. And once they have it, ruthless demand of
I love it.
To the expectation.
So powerful. I think sometimes it's easier said than done. But I really love the fact that in the military, as any branches, I feel like we are really a leadership organization. We just happen to have a bunch of hardware. But because even at the lowest level, even when I was an E1 seaman recruit in the Navy, I felt like the Navy was really challenging me to be a leader, even at that lowest rank. It's just amazing the way we do it in the military. But like we said in the introduction, sir, you are also a third-degree black belt instructor. Trained in the Marine Corps martial arts program. What has martial arts taught you about discipline, humility, and controlled aggression and leadership?
Yeah, so I will say, no matter who you are, what your credentials are, if you go to the Martial Arts Center of Excellence in Quantico, Virginia, you will be humbled very quickly. Those are just world-class, and I think it's easy to associate the staff there. I mean, the professionalism really from NCOs and staff NCOs was unbelievable. You have, and a lot of it's attributed to the leadership of Joe Shusko, but you had some of the most physically fit human beings in the department work there.
Wow.
You have world-class martial artists, Division I wrestlers, black belts, and like tournament champions in jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai, and all sorts of things, teaching us all these techniques. But you want to talk about utterly professional, completely enthusiastic, and super developmental. I mean, there are moments where I was clearly being challenged, and people of junior grade to me, I went through as a major, and I had sergeants and corporals and staff sergeants who were there, who were like coaching and mentoring me and developing me through the process. And so it taught me that you can learn from anyone, that rank does not mean deficiency. But it also taught me how ethics are easy as long as it's easy. And that when confronted with violence, we tend to slide down Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The foundation of that is safety and physiological needs. Well, when you're exposed to interpersonal violence like that, even though it's a completely safe environment, no one's looking to really hurt you. There's the anxiety of dealing with that. And then when you're being exposed to that and being demanded not just to endure it, but to dish it out, like they're really demanding that you not just be exposed to violence, but that you give violence, that you be violent. It's how you do that in a way that is focused, disciplined, when all you want to do is lash out, what John Shaw refers to as go berserker mode. How you have to overcome that sort of primal instinct to lash out. It's really, really interesting being exposed to martial arts, because and it's fascinating how some people, you hear them shun away from it. I didn't grow up doing martial arts. I don't follow boxing or any of that stuff. But I know that in this arena, being, if you're going to join the military, you need to be proficient at violence. All of us do. That some people shy away from it, and they find excuses not to do that. I don't want to get hurt, or, that's really not my job, or my rank doesn't do that. When really what they're saying is, it's so uncomfortable to be exposed to personal violence. And I think exposure to that is very, very healthy. And I think it shows how you can condition yourself to adhere to your values, even in the presence of artificial, trained friction, violence, chaos, and uncertainty.
That is so true. Because I always tell my mentees, some people are like, okay, I'm going to join the Navy because I want to get some VA benefit or something. Well, that's not the reason why you join, right?
Yeah.
Because basically we only do two things. We kill our enemies and then we save our people and allies.
Mhm.
Basically, if you're in the military, that is what you do. Oh, I just want to be a doctor or a lawyer. Or no. That's pretty much what you are going to be
Correct.
uh, doing or helping to facilitate. But everything we do, we do it. We have an ethics code, right? We support and defend the Constitution, which is what we do when we join the service, enlisted or officer. And our allegiance is really to the rule of law, right? The law of armed conflict. But there is maybe so. Before we get into the free resources you made available to everyone in the description for this podcast, I give people the link how they can get access to the book you wrote, Ethics for Marine, how ethics drive lethality and combat effectiveness. But before we talk about this, what is the difference between morality and ethics?
Okay.
Is there one?
That is a phenomenal question, and I will fall back on an analogy provided by, again, Jack Hoban. If you have a chance. So I'll just say to the whole audience, the books you can buy, my books that you can buy on Amazon, don't buy those. Go to the free book, Ethics for Marines. It's accessible to anybody. One book that I would say, if you can get a copy of it, buy it, is Jack Hoban's book, The Ethical Warrior. He uses he makes a distinction between ethics that I think is really, really powerful. And what he says, he uses this thing called a bully analogy. So ethics is defined as the adherence of one's actions to their values. A value is defined as a trait, quality, or principle deemed important to an individual or an organization. And to be moral is to assess your understanding of values to discern and appreciate the difference between good and bad. So the analogy that he uses is the bully analogy. And what he says is, hey, if you are a kid at school and you see a bully picking on a kid, and you feel that you assess the situation and use your values to say, hey, picking on a kid and demeaning them is wrong. Congratulations. You used your values to determine what's right and wrong. That's good. You're a moral person, but you haven't acted. And because you haven't acted, you're not ethical yet. Now, if you go and get a teacher or you do something, anything, that's where the art of ethics is. What does action look like? That's up to the individual. And he says, so if you go get a teacher, now you're ethical. And then he goes one step further and says, if you get between the bully and the kid being picked on, now you're an ethical warrior.
That is so powerful. And again, the book is going to be added. We do have a digital bookshelf for this podcast. We started last May with just 3 books. Now we have more than 600 books.
Wow.
Mostly by people like you who've come on the show and recommended those things. So we do read a lot here. I guess even from the title itself, right? Again, this book is absolutely available for free, and you're going to find the link in the description. Ethics for Marine, how ethics drives lethality and combat effectiveness. The first thing that comes to mind, sir, is the title itself challenges a common assumption, right? Ethics and lethality are not competing priorities, but ethical behavior can actually make a military organization more effective. It's almost counterintuitive, but I really love that, and I think that is important. And I think that gives us an opportunity to explore how character, trust, discipline, accountability, and ethical decision-making actually translate into real operational advantage. So the first question I have for you, Colonel, is your book makes a provocative argument right in the title, right? So I guess the question I have for you, sir, is how does ethical behavior make Marines or sailors or airmen more lethal and combat effective?
Yeah, so the Marine Corps, in our seminal publication, which you can download any of these books for free, but Marine Corps Doctrinal Publication 1, Warfighting, it says that the Marine Corps' warfighting philosophy is called maneuver warfare, which is defined as a warfighting philosophy that seeks to shatter the enemy's cohesion with a series of rapid, focused, and unexpected attacks, creating a situation with which they cannot cope. And if you look at that, if you do more than just read it, if you study it, what it's saying is cohesion is what we're trying to erode. And so if you're going to study warfare, then you need to understand what cohesion is. If we take the cohesion element away from the enemy, we can overwhelm them. So if you look in going through our doctrine, cohesion is defined as the intense bonding of a force. In our doctrine, we say Marines, but it applies to the enemy as well. The intense bonding of warriors strengthen over time that results in absolute trust. And so the question then becomes, so the expectation is if, you're on a ship and I'm going to go ashore, if the Navy and Marine Corps team is going to do this thing, hey, I'm going to go ashore. I need to know that despite all the obstacles that your ship is going to face, the fatigue, the hunger, the danger, the uncertainty, when we go ashore, naval gunfires are going to be there. That when you have landing craft that are going to deploy our forces, that your folks are trained, that you've done the maintenance on those landing craft, all those things are there, that we rely on the Navy on, and that there has to be a degree of trust to facilitate the speed and tempo, because I don't want to, as a Marine, I don't want to waste my time. I want to focus on my job, and I don't want to spend time being like, well, are you sure you did the maintenance on that? Are you sure that your communications gear works? Are you sure that the ship is in the right position? I need to know that despite all the chaos, violence, and friction and uncertainty of war, that if you are my shipmate and you say, do not worry about these things, it's super hard for me to do them, but they're going to be done no matter what, even if it endangers my life. When I have that trust in you, when your actions adhere to the values of integrity, knowledge, discipline, the endurance it takes to be a sailor in the United States Navy, oh my gosh, that I can be a better Marine when I go ashore because I know you're going to do all those things. So I can just focus on my Marine Corps team because my Navy shipmates, I don't have to worry about them. And when that happens, the aggregated effect of not just the Marines, but the Navy Marine Corps team going ashore together and making things happen, whoever's on the shore that's trying to fight us, they are going to incur the wrath of a Navy and Marine Corps team that is far more cohesive for a lot of reasons, but because you were ethical enough to stick to the values of integrity, knowledge, discipline, endurance, judgment. Those things being applied facilitate the trust that creates cohesion. And when we're a cohesive team, we overwhelm the enemy with our collective violence. So while I do understand the concept of ethics as being nice, I wanted to take ethics as a critical component of war. So when people hear things about, like, they think it's a touchy-feely policy about making sure people feel welcomed and greeted. It's not an issue of being nice to people in Congress or people who are civilians. It's all about unit cohesion. And so make sure every member of the team is appreciating their value to the organization, because we need them. No one is extra. That facilitates a team that has greater trust, that facilitates greater cohesion, and that means greater combat effectiveness and acceleration of violence when we go to war.
That is really quite insightful. Especially, days like now where there are some people who might feel like, we need to unrestrict, untie the end of the warfighter so they can be really aggressive and macho and so forth. It seems to me like part of the reason why I joined the Navy. I am a United States sailor. But I am not a terrorist. I'm not a criminal. Yeah, sometimes we do have to use violence, but again, we do have great values in the Navy: honor, courage, commitment. Those are my core values. That is who I am to my core. Right? I have the U.S. Constitution. I follow the law. That's legal. But there is also, I think, a morality to it, knowing what's right and wrong. For me, I come from a Christian background. That's where most of my morality is based on. But then even beyond that, even in the Catholic Church and Christianity, we talk about just war, right? There is definitely a type of war where, because I'm a believer, I think God is on your side because you are doing the right thing. You are protecting the innocent. No? One of our values in the Navy is also to help defend democracy, not just here, but around the world. So those are things that are good, that really make our world better. And I feel like for some people, especially they have this idea that the law of armed conflict, having all of the JAG and the chaplain to give in their advice about things, they are just restricting what we can do. But I really feel like when I read your book, sir, it's not that ethics is a set of restriction, but rules telling warfighter what they cannot do. But it's almost like really the opposite, right? Ethics can be an enabler of combat power, which is actually quite powerful. Can you walk us through that argument, sir?
Sure. And so I think obviously the dialogue about the ability to enable combat power through trust, using the Navy Marine Corps team, I think that kind of addresses that. I think to your point though about the law of armed conflict and fighting for the country and things like that. I would offer, there's a great, in my class, there's a great video from General Dunford when he's being confirmed by the Senate. He was asked, this is when at the peak of ISIS's sort of movement into Iraq. He was asked by Senator Cruz, he said, are you concerned about the rules of engagement, that it's overly with air power and that it's constraining the effectiveness of aviation? He doesn't miss a beat. General Dunford immediately says, Senator, I'm not worried about those restrictions because when we go to war with our values.
Wow. And
what he means by that, though, in a more specific way, and this is where the understanding of what the military does needs to be understood. Again, MCDP 1, our theory of war is that war has to serve policy. And that, we love this country because it's democratic. And I'm doing a lot of research right now on the dialogue the founders had about how to create the Constitution, where it's a strong enough government that it can be effective, but it's also checked to a certain degree against being tyrannical. And so if you look at the theory of war that we have in the United States, is that we as warfighters serve policy. Policy is created by the Congress and by the president. And those are people that are elected by the American people. And so if you and I say we support and defend the Constitution, this is where discipline comes into play. Over the course of my career and your career, we've had people across different political parties be elected. And I'm sure as individuals, we have opinions about, well, I would have done this if I was a senator. If I was the president, I would have done that. We are saying as service members to support and defend the Constitution that land and naval forces will be regulated, Article 1 of the Constitution, by the Congress, that the commander-in-chief is the president of the United States. So we're saying we will subject ourselves to whoever the American people elect. So disciplined and ruthless enthusiasm for codified policy is our business, one. Two, the other thing that we need to keep in mind is that ethical conduct in war can reflect support for policy. So when it's called Operation Iraqi Freedom, Operation Enduring Freedom, while there might be a temptation to lash out and go berserk when you've been dealing with the loss of very good friends or people that you care about in combat, mindless application of violence that would harm citizens, civilians, especially in a counterinsurgency fight, that does not support policy. Even if we're killing the enemy in the process, defeating them, we can have a tactical success with terrible strategic consequences. So our ethical conduct means those restrictions are put on us by the people we would say we would be subject to, the people that the American people voted for, if we support democracy, and that we are going to be disciplined enough, even when it's dangerous tactically, to adhere to those things because our actions reflect the values of the service. And I'll end by talking about this one story. There was a Army specialist named, his name was Schitterer. He was an Army medic and was shot in the chest by a sniper in Iraq. He gets back up immediately because his SAPI plate stopped the bullet. His platoon goes out there and says, what happened? He's like, I got shot. I think it came from over there. They maneuver and they capture the guys that shot him. And he notices one of the guys who's injured and bleeding was the sniper that just moments earlier tried to kill him.
Wow.
He's a medic. The guy is unarmed now. The sniper's unarmed. So he immediately takes out his kit and saves the sniper's life.
Wow.
And that young man, the discipline and the adherence of our values, when we have a president and a secretary of state and a secretary of defense who is saying, we are here to liberate. The policy is to liberate the people of Iraq. That young man's adherence to our values did far more to support that policy than I think most people can appreciate. But it would have been easy for him to give in to the temptation, right, to let the enemy die. But the law of armed conflict says once he puts down his weapon, he's a POW, I have to take care of him. And
that is amazing.
Do that. Yeah, super impressive.
So I guess the question is, how do we prepare our Marine, our airman, sailor, and soldier to make those ethical decisions when they have only second to act? Because many times, especially when you are in the fog of war, you have to face decision in combat where you are exhausted, you are afraid, you are angry, you are grieving, operating with incomplete information, and under extraordinary time pressure. So how do we prepare our folks to always make the right decision under immense pressure?
Yeah, so I would say the first thing is there has to be education. One, we have to be educated about the nature of war itself, that it's inherently uncertain, chaotic, violence, and very, very violent, and that there are going to be human dimensions to war that will make the adherence of our values far, far more difficult than you think it likely will be. I think talking to people about the value of reflection, of what those challenges could be, the mental preparation, as Dick Winters talked about prior to D-Day, the individual prep. Yes, there's a lot that the institution can do, but the individual has to prepare themselves.
Yes.
So thinking through what those challenges will be to our values, how our values will help us succeed in combat, and then knowing that even though it might be tempting to turn away from those values for an immediate short-term benefit, that sticking to our values will help us be more effective tactically and then support us operationally and even strategically. And then I think training to exposure to the things that will keep us from being ethical is absolutely important. Friction comes in three forms: physical, mental, and then moral friction. We will culminate physically. That's why we do physical training. Push back on the culminating point. We can culminate mentally. Oh man, I just can't think of anything else. I'm at the bottom of the barrel. I have no new ideas. That's why we invest so much in professional military education. People years at a time, we send them off to school to learn so that when they do go to war, they always have something that they can do. But then we also let them know that you can culminate morally. There can be a point at which you no longer feel like sticking to your values. We say leaders eat last. And I often pose a few pictures of American POWs captured by the Japanese in World War II, and they look like human skeletons. And I would often say, in garrison, I can let other people eat before me. Tell these guys that somebody should eat before them, much more difficult. So I think educating people about moral culmination as a risk, educating them about why ethics helps us become much more effective as a combat force, much more successful at the lawful application of violence, and then training them to say, we're going to make you resistant to the friction of war that will tempt you to turn away from your values. Ruthless adherence to values and exposure that even though you're afraid, you're exposed to violence, you're fatigued, you kind of want to quit, that you can still overcome the challenges and stick to our values.
I guess the follow-up question I will have for you, sir, is one of the most difficult leadership challenges, I think, is what happens when mission accomplishment appears to conflict with values or ethical principle. What framework should a young Marine, NCO, or junior officer use in that moment?
Yeah, I mean, just because somebody's of senior rank doesn't mean every task that they issue is a lawful order. I do think the number one question that everybody should ask, because I've heard this question a lot about leadership. If you have bad leadership, how should you do it? How should you deal with it? Look, there's a difference between an unlawful leader and an unliked leader.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, I think everybody can talk about a boss, somebody senior to them that I would not do that. I just don't think they appreciate us. Okay, that's one thing. But is what they're doing, are you resistant to what you've been tasked with because you don't like the task, or you fundamentally believe that it's illegal, or that it is a violation of our values? If it's fundamentally a violation of our values, there's no question what you should do. Then you not just have the choice, you have an obligation. That's why we have the inspector general. That's why we have lawyers. That's why we have means of regardless of even something like an any mouse box, where you can report up the chain. You can request mast. There are all these tools, regardless of rank, for us to expose unethical leaders. But I would just ask, as much as we want ethical leadership, we also need ethical followership.
Yes.
And the discipline to say, you know what? And I've had it in my career where I've had people, and I saw it from especially my first platoon, where I've made decisions, and my staff and CO leadership pulled me aside. They're like, "Sir, I don't know that we should be doing that." And there are often times where they talk me off the ledge, and but there were a handful of times where I said, "I hear what you're saying. I think this might be the case where what I said is what we should do. I think we're going to do that." And we do that. And they didn't necessarily agree with me. And then when it was all said and done, not always, but a handful of times, pull me aside, like, you know what? You were right. And I will tell you, with some of my bosses at the time, I disagreed. But in hindsight, I was like, man, my boss, when I was a company commander, there were a couple of times where my battalion commander made a call, and I was like, no, that was so wrong. Now, I was wrong. He was right. And so I would say to everybody, the challenge of a leader that's doing, unethical things, that's easy. That's not hard at all. The hard part is it something that is unethical, or is it just something that you don't want?
Yes.
And conquering yourself, having that discipline to say, I don't need to like it. That's a lawful order. I will execute, because at some point I'm going to give an order, and maybe somebody on my team isn't going to be fully sold, no matter how well I present the argument. At some point, we're in the U.S. military. There's a chain of command. There's a uniform code of military justice, and per the Constitution, it is the Congress that regulates the UCMJ. And if you're going to support and defend the Constitution, that's what supporting and defending it means. It means Congress made this rule.
I love it.
Then I have to stick to it.
No, that is so true. And one question from the audience here is, at any point in your career, did you find yourself in a situation where you personally did not have full trust in your immediate superior or chain of command?
I would say I never had, I'm very biased for the Marine Corps. The amount of time, effort, and energy that the Marine Corps in the screening process to provide sound leadership. I think the Marine Corps has provided me some better than others, but I've always had leaders who were very, very good. I've had a couple that some were better than others, and a couple where I was like, man, you're barely meeting the bar.
Yes.
I would say this, again, if it's I've never been given an order to do something illegal, but anytime there was an instance, and I would offer this, and it's very empowering, being an ethical follower.
Yes.
In the United States military. And again, if you study our doctrine of decent mission command, I give you my intent, you go off and fulfill it. What I've usually found is that as the subordinate, as the follower, there is a tremendous, it's a burden, but it's an opportunity. I think we view followership as being a mindless, tell me to jump and I'll how high. But really the talent and the skill of, I'm going to give you my intent, I'm going to give you my guidance, and I'm going to leave you alone. But I need to know, no matter how hard it gets, unless you're going to fail, I can trust, I can leave you alone, which is what people want. And what I've really found is, even with bosses that I've had who maybe weren't where I want them to be personally, I've found that if you are an ethical follower, they are far more receptive. If you show that you're getting after their initiatives, even if it's not, I wouldn't have made that a priority. It's not my job to make that a priority. You made it a priority, so now it's my priority.
Awesome.
What I've usually found is if you still take care of your people, but you're leading them in an endeavor to follow your boss, your boss will be much more amenable and receptive to some of the suggestions that you have, because at that point, you've validated, hey, look, when you give me a task, it's going to get done. But I just ask, and it's what my staff and COs told me, hey, sir, we'll do whatever your orders are. We just ask that you hear us out first. And I think that gave so much trust in them, and it facilitated, I think, their trust in me when I did hear them out, even if I didn't agree with them, which 99% of the time I did, because they're much smarter than me.
Wow, that's powerful.
I would offer that to anybody listening.
Yeah, so especially in the Navy, where we talk about command by negation, you are the CEO, like I've had the privilege of being, and then you are away at sea. So your immediate superior is nowhere near you to look over your shoulder. You have to make pretty much all of the decision. Like I used to think when I was enlisted, you are pretty much God at sea, but knowing the intent of your immediate superior and then executing on that, that is so powerful. So my mentor, Captain Rothschild, by the way, U.S. Navy captain, not Marine captain. I was a judge on board the USS Essex, and somebody told me, hey, Captain so-and-so wants to see you. I was only an O2. I was, oh my goodness, and she's going to be talking to me. I was just stressing out. And then come to find out it was a Marine O3. I'm like, what in the world? Never tell me that. But anyway, one follow-up my Citadel has is, without naming individual, how did you manage the dynamic while maintaining professionalism, mission alignment, and your own ethical standard?
Oh, wow. Could you repeat that one more time, just so I can?
How did you manage the dynamic while maintaining professionalism? Like, if you don't really agree with your superior, mission alignment, and your own ethical standard.
Yeah, I'd say, again, I go back to the talent and skill of followership. I had, it's called JJ Did-Tie-Buckle, the leadership traits, the values of a leader, right? And so if you're going to stick to those things, then you need to be able to, as a leader, an ethical leader will stick to those values. But I was asking several friends, and one of them said, hey, what are the traits of a follower? Because I think there's a lot of skill that is required in followership. And he said, it's all the same. If you're going to be a follower, you need knowledge, you need integrity, you need bearing, you need empathy and endurance. And I think as much as we want our bosses to trust us as followers, I think there are times where we need to take a leap of faith, just like we're asking them to do, that we need to trust them. I'd offer, the connection, how do you manage those instances? I would come back to the concept of, if we know what we're saying when we say we support and defend the Constitution, then I think there's a point at which, like I would offer this, like when we talk about just war theory, that the concept of, is this a just war? Should we go to that? Per the Constitution, who gets to make the call about whether or not we go to war?
Congress.
It's Congress.
Yeah.
Again, the Constitution makes this very simple for military members. We're subject to the Congress's regulations and the commander-in-chief, the president. It's not my job to make a decision about whether or not we should go to war. Our ethical conduct to support policy, that is up to you and me.
Yes.
But I'd offer that understanding what our oath really means helps me to say, even when my boss makes a decision, I'm like, man, I would not make that call
Yes.
Is my boss allowed to make that decision? Often, almost every time it's yes. Almost every time it's yes. And then it's just a matter of, well, then why do I feel this way? It's because it's not what I want.
Yes.
Fortunately, my oath never required never I mean, that's really, really hard. I hear people like, should we have gone to Iraq? Should we gone to Afghanistan? The war in Iran, people are going to have questions about that anytime we go to war. And I appreciate any American who wants to think critically about sending men and women into harm's way. I'm very grateful for that.
Yes.
But it's silly to ask a U.S. service member, should we be in this war? That's not it's not our position to do that. And once we appreciate that as service members, but we need to. It becomes very easy, but we need to know what that means when we say, the Constitution is a manual for governance. And if you're going to subject yourself to that, wow, that means oftentimes what I want is not going to be adhered to. And that has to be okay.
So insightful and so powerful. I hope all of the junior officer and senior enlisted are listening very, very well. Now, we do need to end the show soon, but my goodness, I could be talking to you, sir, for another hour or two. This is so fascinating. I think this is going to be one of the most memorable episodes for this season. But I guess ethics is so crucial. I guess by reading your book, sir, you are also arguing for something beyond just periodic ethics training. I think when I first joined the Navy, I guess at boot camp, they do talk about ethics too. Maybe when I became an officer, they did too. But it's kind of like, once and done, and we really never discuss that. Do you believe that an actual Marine Corps ethics doctrine, even whether it's the Navy, the Air Force, or whatever branches, do you think what is missing today, sir, is I guess the question I have, what would you put into that? Do we actually need a doctrine? And if yes, and I think that's the answer, what would you put into that doctrine, sir?
Yeah, so I would offer that the Ethics for Marines book, which again is absolutely free, that no information is captured, just download the book. That was my written doctrine, recommended doctrine. That actually Commandant Neller in 2017, it won his innovation challenge, the proposed MCDP on ethics. And the reason why, and there it is. I got a medal for it, which was humbling, but I would much rather the Marine Corps would have adopted it. I would put it to you this way: when I got to MARFOR Cyber, our doctrine on warfighting was written and published in 1989.
Wow.
So that book was written in 1989, informed by centuries of combat experience in the Marine Corps. But I don't even know if it was, I think it was probably created on a typewriter, right? I don't know how prolific computers were in the military at that point. But I would tell you, there's a timeless, but all that book really does is three fundamental things. It says, what is war? That's the nature of war. The second chapter is our theory of war, why we go to war, why is it important, which, to serve policy, and then has some theories about the war. And then it's the last two chapters are how we prepare and then how we conduct war. So that's all it is. That book is just as applicable in the Peloponnesian War, and I found it's just as applicable in that war as it is to the cyber war. It is just as relevant to me as a colonel at Marine Corps Forces Cyber Command as it was to me as a lieutenant in an infantry battalion. And I will tell you that framework, it doesn't tell you what to do if you're fighting in an urban environment or a jungle environment or a maritime environment. It's broad enough to talk about. It provides you a framework of how to view war so that you can be successful once you get into it, a mental framework of how to think, not what to think. And I think when it comes to ethics, everybody is put in a room and they just start to say it's doing the right thing. It's sticking to our values and principles. MCDP 1 is brutal. It's a brutal read because it says some harsh things like it's inherently violent. There are human dimensions. You will be instilled with fear that you've never felt before. The awful truth that the number one resource, straight out of the book, the number one resource we as Marines will expend in combat is human lives. That's brutal. And so I think when it comes to ethics, an ethics doctrine that says the nature of ethics, having a theory of ethics that helps us in war, and then how you make ethical organizations, I think is fundamentally central and missing in United States military doctrine. So for the Marine Corps, but all the services, I would say educating people about how what ethics are, to your point, ethics, morals, and values, complementary but distinct, tying it to our nature, our philosophy of war, how it makes us better at maneuver warfare, and then how it supports our theory of war, how it makes us better at supporting strategic policy, which is what we go to war to do. That is central to what we do as war fighters. And nobody has presented ethics in a framework that helps us understand I am more lethal on the battlefield if I'm ethical, and I am more effective as a war fighter to support policy if I'm ethical. And then the last thing I think we need to do is educate people. You can culminate morally. The nature of war will tempt you. It's not guaranteed, but it will tempt you to turn away from your values when you're confronted with the awful work of war, when you see terrible things happen to good people that you love, and when you're nervous about them getting hurt, that you will be tempted to cut corners, to save your people, to when you're tired, to not do the right things, to take care of other people, to educate people that ethics are easy only when they're easy. And reconciling that with the nature of war is really hard. And we don't emphasize that enough about how it can culminate morally, but how you can also build your moral capacity through education and training. And once people have that framework, I mean, ethics for Marines is, I think, about 90 pages with really big font. It's simplicity. Its simplicity is an asset, just like MCDT1. It's only about 90 pages, lots of pictures, and this follows that format. So I would say, this book is the doctrine, and I would say it's designed to tie ethical conduct to success in war.
Well, lots of things you said, sir, and we do need to end the show soon, but this is so incredibly important, I think, especially when the stakes are the highest. We usually don't rise up to our level of expectation or potential, but we always fall back to our training. That's why I think ethical training is so important. I really wish the services would do it even annually. It is so critical. But another thing you mentioned, you talked about cyber warfare. So we are both in the information warfare domain, and part of the people who watch this show are not in the military at all. They're from Silicon Valley, where high tech is really what they do. The question I must ask you is, warfare is rapidly incorporating artificial intelligence these days, autonomous system, cyber capability, drones, robotics, and increasingly sophisticated information operation. Just the nature of war has changed so much, starting to me with really the war in Ukraine. But when machines can recommend or potentially execute decision at extraordinary speed, where must human ethical judgment remain in the kill chain?
Yeah, I would offer, right now the department's policy is that with artificial intelligence is that a human has to be on the loop. But I don't mean to oversimplify this, and I wouldn't say I would just offer when it comes to artificial intelligence and autonomous weapon systems, a human has to ultimately be responsible, just like they are in combat. If a rogue platoon goes off and does terrible things, you better believe the company commander and the battalion commander are likely going to be held accountable for that. So I don't think that's going to change. The responsibility of command, we will never have an autonomous system that's in command. It'll be under the auspice of a commander. But I would say the trust that commander has towards that autonomous system is just like trust in a military organization with nothing but human beings. If I, as a subordinate, want to be trusted by my boss and given autonomy, that's my responsibility to demonstrate that proficiency and to be worthy of that trust. I would never want my commander to blanketly give me trust when I just checked in and they don't know anything about me. It's irresponsible of them. But I think they should it's up to me to earn that trust, have a track record of success, not just to achieve the objective, but to do it in an ethical way. And then that my commander would then, the more I do that, the more autonomy I get. And I think when we talk about autonomous weapon systems, a commander, even if I make a mistake as a human, why would you give Katolin that freedom of look at his track record, look at all the things that he did. Look,
Yes.
a mistake was made, but given the chaos, violence, friction, and uncertainty, nature of war, the enduring nature of war that he was confronted with, it's understandable at the time that he made the call that he did. And
Makes sense.
unfortunately, there was horrible collateral damage. I think we're
Yes.
going to be confronted with the exact same, just because you were handed an autonomous weapons system, if you just took it and mindlessly applied it in combat without training with it, without learning about it, and then
Yes.
also mandating that it learn about you as a leader,
Mhm.
if you don't work to establish that, then I think we're going to have a problem there. But the concept
Yes.
that a drone is going to go out there and do all these war crimes, autonomously.
Yes.
I think a commander has to understand their subordinates, and if some of their subordinate executors are going to be autonomous weapon systems, I think all the tenets
Wow.
of command and control still apply there.
Yes, and what worries you most, sir, about a generation of warfighters becoming technologically sophisticated faster than our institution develop the ethical framework governing those technologies?
I'd offer that, that's a really, really, really good question. And this is where, honestly, if it's a shameless plug, but to bring it back to ethics, the reason why I wanted a doctrine for ethics was because, I saw ethics being addressed in one of two ways, either just talking about, again, great philosophers of the time, agnostic to war, which is not very helpful, or ethics was codified in very specific policies. You shall not receive a gift from somebody in an official capacity valued more than $20. Those are very specific and niche, almost too precise. At some point, you can't have policies for everything. At some point, the art of ethics has to come from having a heuristic, a way of thinking about ethics and its application. There will inevitably be policies that catch up to the technology, but at some point, the human element, when it comes to artificial intelligence and autonomous weapon systems, if they have an understanding of ethics making us successful in war, then I think, and by the way, the temptations of war to be unethical, understanding how important ethics is, I think before the policies catch up, if we have a doctrine on ethics at the warfighter level, at the commander level, before the policy is codified, their heuristic of understanding about ethics and war, they will self-impose. The General Dunford was being asked when he was asked about air power. He was asked, basically the question was, do you need me to unchain air power to support the fight against ISIS? General Dunford said, which some people would have thought was super tempting about, give me all the kinetic. His understanding about ethics and his understanding about supporting policy and how honorable action on the battlefield can support strategic narratives.
Yes.
He said, no, keep the check on combat power in place. I don't want it.
That's powerful.
So I would offer the same would apply to autonomous warfare and AI.
That's right. And the book, again, I guess this is going to be the only book we are going to talk about. I thought I was going to have time to talk about your latest book, but this really has pretty much the essence of what you talk about in ethics. Pretty much it only has 93 pages and 3 chapters only. Chapter 1, the nature of ethics, then the theory of ethics, and then the last chapter, ethical development. Is there a chapter, as you already said, that challenged you the most, or that surprised you, something you ended up learning that you didn't really expect?
The one that I found most profound when I was researching was the specific. I thought it was actually probably the most exhilarating was the theory of ethics. How ethics supports our warfighting philosophy of maneuver warfare, but also our theory of war. So our philosophy of war, which is maneuver warfare, but how it supports our theory of war, that war must serve policy, which is central. So how do I become effective in combat against an enemy? But how does my ethical conduct support our political leadership, to support political policy? And that to me, I thought was probably the most exciting part of the research, because it took from our doctrine all these implied tasks about ethics and was making them specified tasks in a doctrine. Yeah.
I really love that. And of course, it's available for free through the Marine Corps Association, which means a Lance Corporal, a Lieutenant, a Commander, a military educator, anybody can engage with this idea without the financial barrier. So thanks so much for doing this. But why was it important to you, sir, to make this work broadly accessible?
Because I saw the way that it was being treated, in institutions of professional military education, and I just never saw anybody. I mean, just to the question you were asking, most people think ethics is antithetical to warfighting.
Yes.
Nobody made the connection that we are more lethal on the battlefield if we're ethical, and educating people to how hard it can be to be ethical is something that, academics, I have a PhD and some master's degrees. I don't consider myself an academic though. But having people that have never been shot at or, saw terrible things from people being pulled out of trucks whose bodies have been mutilated, like people that you fundamentally respect and love, knowing that you're tasking people that you love to go into harm's way is, until you can read about it, you can watch movies about it, you can talk to people who have done it, but unless you've been there, unless you've been exposed to that type of violence, the reality of that situation, it's very, very difficult to make the connections between ethics and success in war, because it can be tempting to not be ethical. And so I found that nobody was that bridge, that divide that you were talking about. Well, you talk about ethics, but it's counterintuitive, lethality. No. It makes you more effective and more lethal in combat.
Powerful.
Nobody had made that connection well enough, at least for me. And so I wanted to find a way to thread that needle for the Marine Corps. But really, that book says ethics for Marines, but it's tied to the enduring nature of war, which applies to every service. So I would say
absolutely
everybody. Yeah.
Actually, I would even dare to say it applied really to any industry as well. Like I say, a good portion of people who follow this podcast are in Silicon Valley. And I think, especially in cyber security, you do have to be ethical, right? You have to add value to your organization. And it's not just the stakeholder and going for profit, but also your partner, your vendors, right? The employees, and even society and the community at large. I think the more ethical you are in the long term, you're going to add so much value to your organization and I believe to the world. So as we end the interview, sir, we do need to end this. If every Marine, from the newest private to the commandant, read Ethics for Marine, what is the one idea that you would want them to remember when they close the short book?
I would want them to know that ethics is an accelerant to combat power, and it requires far more talent and skill than I think people acknowledge. But it is I would say this, that the concept of function ethics, the philosophy of ethics in the book, is that anybody can be valued to an organization that has a phenomenal purpose, and every organization the work is too important for organization to be cast aside or dismissed, even if it's a non-combat role. And I would just offer that everybody. Ruthless adherence and demand that people stick to the values of the organization, the unit that you're in, can get them to adopt those values. As long as you say our organization has a vital purpose in war, and you are tremendous value added, but you have to adhere to our values to help us fulfill the purpose. And so that's the concept of function ethics that's in the book. People's behavior can be shaped, they can be made ethical, but they need to know that it's going to be hard, and that they can overcome the challenges to do the honorable thing, to keep their honor clean, and help organizations fulfill tremendously important roles when every indication should be that they should fail, that people can be shaped to be ethical.
All right, so I have one final question for you, but before I ask it, is there something I should have asked you I didn't get the chance to ask? I know more than 2/3 of what we had planned.
I think you've asked. At some point, I do need to go myself.
Yes, sir.
I thought the questions were great. I really do appreciate it. Yeah.
And how can people find you and follow you, sir?
Yeah, so I do have a Substack called The Ethical Warfighter. And it basically is a bunch of essays about different sections of the book, Ethics for Marines. I am on LinkedIn, but I would just encourage everybody. There's a link to the book, Ethics for Marines. If you can get it at the Marine Corps Association webpage, again, it's completely free. Please use it as a resource, and I think it applies to all the services. But I would offer, I think you're absolutely right, BZ, that creating trust in organizations is central to any endeavor, military or business. So yeah.
All right, here's my final question, sir. And thank you again for giving us a little extra time. I felt like this was needed because it's so critical, especially right now in the age we are living. So, Colonel, if you could complete this sentence for the young Marine who may, or sailor, airman, or whatever, who may someday face the hardest decision of his or her life. When nobody is watching, when the pressure is enormous, and when the mission is on the line, remember that.
Oh, wow. That's powerful. Remember that virtue is a superpower.
Virtue is a superpower. Ethics win wars. Thank you so much, Colonel. I really appreciate your time on the Leadership and Success podcast. Thank you so much for enlightening us. I think this is going to be one of the most memorable episodes of this season. Thank you.
Thank you, my friend. Appreciate being here.
All right, everybody, this is one for the book. Please support the Colonel. I know he didn't ask you to buy anything, but I think everybody at minimum should go ahead and get the free book. He made it completely available. The link is in the description of the podcast. It's only a free chapter. It's only 93 pages, so very, very easy to read. Ethics for Marine. How ethics drives lethality and combat effectiveness. And for my friend in Silicon Valley, I think you can learn so much from this as well. So you can find him on LinkedIn. So linkedin.com in Dennis Katolin, PhD, 479-00626, Bravo. Easy to find and is on Substack as well. And I'm going to add the link to his Substack page in the description of the podcast as well. And of course, his latest book, which I believe everybody needs to purchase, is available everywhere books are: Strategic Culture, Military Adaptation, and the Information Environment, a comparative study. And he's also written the book on ethics, a doctrine of the American warfighter, but also ethics. U.S. Marine Corps. Again, this applies to all of the branches of the military and to the industry too. Now, as we end this today, I must say, I am really grateful to the Colonel for joining us today for a challenging, I think this was a challenging interview, but he really challenged us to think differently, right, about ethics. Not as something separate from mission accomplishment, but as something essential to mission accomplishment. I think one of my biggest takeaway today is really simple but quite powerful, right? Ethics is a leadership responsibility. We cannot wait until the moment of crisis or combat or moral uncertainty to decide who we are. Character must be developed way before that, right? Trust must be earned beforehand. Like one of my mentors told me, right? Rank is rented, but trust is earned, right? And now we also need to learn how to trust some of the autonomous system, empowered by artificial intelligence. What a world we live in. But ethical decision-making must be practiced beforehand. Throughout my own leadership journey, I have tried to live by a simple philosophy, right? Mission first, people always. I think in the Navy, we probably stole it from the Army, but that is so true. We do have to accomplish the mission. There is a reason why we exist. There is a reason why there is a command, there is a unit, but we always have to take care of our people, right? Those two ideas are not in conflict. In fact, today's conversation reminds us that taking care of our people, developing their character and building trust, demanding accountability, and creating an ethical command climate are all essential to accomplish the mission. So the work of the Colonel also reminds us that lethality is about more than just weapons, platform technology, and firepower. But combat effectiveness depends on disciplined people who trust one another, trust their leadership, and understand the mission, and possess the moral courage to make difficult decisions, especially under extraordinary pressure in the fog of war. And that lesson extends far beyond the Marine Corps. Whether you are leading Marines, sailors, soldiers, airmen, guardian, or even a corporation, or a cybersecurity team, or a classroom, or a nonprofit, or a family, I believe leadership without ethics eventually becomes leadership without trust, and leadership without trust cannot endure. So as artificial intelligence, autonomous systems, cyber warfare, robotic, drones, and other emerging technology accelerate the speed of decision-making, I believe this conversation becomes even more important. Technology may help us determine what we can do, but human beings must still wrestle with what we should do. There's a difference. That is why we need leaders of character, leaders willing to ask difficult questions, leaders willing to speak when silence would be easier, and leaders willing to accept responsibility. I speak a lot about a dozen times every year, and these last 3 to 4 years, I've talked a lot about cybersecurity and artificial intelligence. And I used to kind of challenge my audience to say, what would you do if artificial intelligence committed a crime? Right? Who would be responsible? Who would be accountable? Well, that happened a couple of weeks ago, right? OpenAI, their latest model actually committed crimes, hacking the systems of their customer. Then, okay, AI committed a crime. Who is going to be responsible for that? Who is actually going to go to jail? So we really have a lot of things to think about when it comes to moral and ethics, but I think it really comes down to leadership. Right? Leaders who understand that how we accomplish the mission matters, right? It's not just what you do, but how you do it. And the Colonel, we really want to thank him for making ethics for Marines, how ethics drives lethality and combat effectiveness, available absolutely free to anyone who listens to this podcast. And I encourage everyone watching or listening, military or civilian alike, to read, to discuss it with your teams, and most importantly, to turn those lessons into action. Only 3 chapters, very, very easy to read, but what is really important is how we put it into practice, right? I think perhaps the most important question we can leave our audience with today is not simply what would I do, but who am I becoming today, so that when the hardest decision comes, I will have a character to do what is right. I'm reminded, I'm going to end with this, my primary mentor, Dr. John Maxwell. He said success to him is having the people closest to him love him and admire him the most. When I can look into the eyes of my wife, Demetria Zinga, and my daughter, Naomi and Zoe, and they like the man I am, the father I am, the husband I am, the human being I am, that means more to me than anything else. Any accolade, anything I've done for the Navy or in Silicon Valley, that really pales in comparison. And I think in order to become that man, in order to become that person, you have to make ethical decisions. So ethics wins wars. Like I always say, mission first, people always. And until next time, this is Coach Busy. Lead with character, lead with courage, lead with purpose, and make a positive difference wherever you serve. Now, I'm going to have another podcast today in a couple of hours. Actually, I'm going to be speaking to the one and only Kathy Eastwood. She's helping CEO and leaders build high-trust teams that drive culture, execution, and profit. She's a best-selling author, a keynote speaker, executive coach, and has more than 30 years of practical experience. So I am looking forward to that. Hopefully, you guys can join me too. And this is going to be the last podcast episode this week. Thank you so much for watching. And until a couple hours, I really appreciate you being here, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye for now.
Thank you for tuning in to the Leadership and Success Podcast with your host, Coach BZ. If today's episode added value to your leadership journey, be sure to subscribe, share, and join us again for more wisdom nuggets on how to lead better and achieve greater success. Remember, leadership is the most critical skill of our time. The world will always need leaders to inspire others, drive innovation, and execute meaningful strategy. So why not count yourself among the bold leaders shaping the 21st century? Until next time, stay inspired, stay committed, and keep leading with excellence.